Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Two Alex.
Been a minute, guy in a cube. It's been a minute. I feel like just all across the board, it's been a minute. Maybe
Yeah,
it's the world like reopening. We're all like, "Hey, with this weekend, we're out of here. We're not doing anything."
yeah,
It's cool though, to kind of be back on the screen. But just as equally, I'm excited to hopefully get off a screen here very soon. As the
yeah,
weather is breaking, I'm so hopeful. Conferences, we won't be as delayed. I would hate to like have to wait until 2022. Who knows? We'll
uh-huh.
we'll kind of see. Um, I don't know. I'm just excited. I got my shot. I'm ready to go out and play. I don't know how you feel, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, the CDC says that if you're fully vaccinated, you can base jump safely now. So I'm ready. Let's do it. No, yeah, I'm excited to go do stuff. I'm going to Hawaii, not next week, but the week after, which I'm very excited about. Yeah. Uh, So let's see what else. Michael asked, "What were we doing in the gap between when Guy in a Cube wasn't streaming? We should have capitalized. We were frantically closing tabs as we were dueling in the link war. All of the many things we had opened up and getting ready so that we didn't accidentally show lots of stuff we don't need."
Awesome. And then awesome. Hopefully no one's hearing an echo here just on my end. Had kind of the audio going. So
Oh,
resolved.
yeah,
Today though,
today.
paginated reports.
Yeah.
The rage. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's excited. Hopefully you saw the paginated report visual, kind of at MBAS. I think it was MBAS. I don't even know anymore. So many virtual conferences. It feels like every 6 weeks there's a new conference. Uh, but it was awesome. I'm just so excited about this paginated report visual, just for the simple fact where a lot of kind of things we've wanted to do within Power BI maybe been limited kind of by that default visual. A lot of things are just like opened up now in terms of creativity. I'll be the first to tell you, like, I've never used SQL Server reporting services like as a developer. Like my previous roles as a kind of reporting analyst, they were just like, well, go make do with Office 365. Like, all right,
Yeah.
I made user forms in Excel or Access, and I had drop downs and queries and parameters, and I was building essentially all of these features and functionalities that have always existed within SQL Server reporting services. So it's kind of cool to come back and look at it within that lens and be like, my gosh, how many hours or days could I have saved if I just had this tool at my disposal? Um, Alex, I know that you had a little bit of experience with, what was it, Crystal or Cognos? Which one was it?
Yeah, so back when I worked at the tiny environmental science lab, we used Crystal Reports. It was like Crystal Reports 2008, and it was like the most janky architecture. Our LOB software, it had like a SQL view builder built into it, so you'd save these views into it, and then you could select a group of views, and that's what would form a report. And the way a report would work is it would generate an access file with the output of all these views, and then print a crystal report that pointed at the access file. So yeah, it was quite the jank. So every time I open up paginated reports, I just get flashbacks to that design paradigm, which didn't make a ton of sense at the time. So I guess my biggest question for you,
Yep.
Alex, is we always hear folks are like, "Oh, I'm trying to do a big table. I want to get 10,000 rows, 100,000 rows." And Power BI is not working. Why won't the export limits be raised? And the answer is always paginated reports. Watch out, Chris Finland's coming. He's going to tell you about paginated reports. And what I never understood about that is my data is in a Power BI data set. Does the performance characteristics somehow magically change by using Power BI report builder or paginated reports, or is it just that table formatting and the pagination makes it more manageable? And so when we talk about the visual, are we really just talking about, hey, this is a fancy matrix builder and like let's go crazy making cool matrices? or is it more than that?
So your question is definitely looking at the performance, right? Where it's like, when we think about kind of the analysis services in Vertipack, it's always about the
Right.
column recompression and all this great things. And whenever you have to uncompress and undo all these
Yeah.
data dictionaries, it just takes a lot of kind of compute, RAM, if you have to store a lot in kind of that memory for things to render. I'm with you there. I have a lot of concerns whenever people are like, I just want to export the data out of my Power BI data set. And I'm like, well, hold on. Can we go back earlier to the source, especially if it's a kind of like a relational database, ODBC connection, maybe to like a Databricks, kind of your example. But if you can, if you're like, well, I have to bring everything just into this Power BI data set because it's contained within a spreadsheet, and then I have to do this as the workaround to the 150,000 export limit, etc. I get it. It's your use of obviously premium if it's kind of capacity based. If it's PPU, why would you even care? Just let Microsoft deal with that shared resource, right? We'll talk about that, and that's kind of my hat as well. Where whenever I start thinking about like a blended architecture, and I'll talk about what that means to me. Maybe somebody will come up with a much better name. But let's go and just like set the base of like report types. I think we've maybe talked about this topic in the past, but I'll kind of jump to the pyramid approach. I'm just seeing a lot of pyramids here lately. How do I export to Excel? Number one most requested feature. Oh, if you want to share my screen, Alex D.
Yeah, let's do it. Great.
Cool.
Report types.
Awesome. So I think more than anything, it's just knowing which tool to use and when to use it, right? Like, well, of course you can build tables and matrices in Power BI. Go for it. Just, I think whenever someone screen shares and I just see a long horizontal bar, I just think of a lot of columns and I go, oh my gosh, what are we trying to accomplish here? That always is kind of what the red flag for me. So breaking down the report types, if it's more analytical, supporting a strategic function or kind of a management decision, dashboards, scorecards, reds, greens, exclamation points, etc. I mean, my goodness, just tell me the numbers at the highest level. I'll make the decision. Power BI reports.
Yeah.
That's a Power BI report for me.
Show me enough information that I can comprehend it all at once and wrap my head around it.
Yep. So if we're starting into these export scenarios, long horizontal bars, people are just like, well, show me a matrix, show me all this tabular format. All right, so what are we doing with that data? What level of weeds are you trying to get into? Is this needed? Especially whenever people are like, well, I need that grain. Well, do you actually need it, or are you just trying to get a raw export? Maybe you're going to mung it with something else. I don't know, put on the blinders, whatever you do with it after me, I'll kind of leave up to you.
One thing that I think a lot about in this operational bucket is if you want a list of things to work through systematically, which is to say the order is not going to change on you by surprise. Maybe you want to take notes. Power BI reports are really bad at that.
Oh, yeah. Agreed.
If you're gonna come back like an hour later and move on to the next row of the table, like, man, you better hope that data set didn't refresh.
So those are the two kind of the tools. Power BI desktop, PowerPoint for data. It's beautiful. It's fun. You point and click. Awesome. Report builder, not as illustrious. It takes a little bit of time here in terms of the developer side, but for the end user, if they're truly just looking for these transactional line items, give them a big flat table. I think I've heard the poor man's ETL here whenever people were kind of recently coming on board to kind of report builder, but you can still do cool interactive things with it, in terms of drill ups, drill downs, drill throughs, etc. So it's not like, hey, some of this is lost or, this is just going to be a static output. But right off the bat, what is it, the problem you're trying to solve? And then for those kind of on the other end, why are you trying to get so low into the weeds? What is that transactional level of detail going to do for you? Do you have that much, Alex D, kind of within your role, where people are like, I need this specific item on this specific day at this specific hour?
So I don't now. In a job that I used to have at Microsoft, we did some of that, but we had a lot of investment into our custom line of business software such that we didn't need to build reports through the BI space. So there were some use cases where paginated reports would have worked, but this was really before premium per user. So wasn't really practical.
Yep.
Now, I don't have that many use cases for us. When I was in the lab, this was all we did. I mean, partially, like, hey, it's not a coincidence that we were using a tool like this, but also, like, it was like, hey, I would print out a list of samples and then go walk into the fridge and go find them and pull them out of their containers. And then I would go, prep them all up, and then I'd go look at this other list I printed with the next test that needed to be worked on. So it was a lot of operational stuff, and we hand them around the lab and make notes. Like, that was the use case. It was fantastic. And even if we had tablets to carry around with us, which would have had some downsides, like we still would have wanted that style of report. Now that I'm at Microsoft, like we have these problems for our sales teams, but we have really heavy investment on the engineering side into building custom web applications. Same reason why we don't really use Power Apps. We could, but many of the problems we have that need an app, like we need a very fancy app.
Yeah. I'm seeing the Power Apps coming up a little bit more here lately too.
I think any day now, I'm going to be advertising a job rec on our team, and it's going to have Power Apps as a skill that we want.
Oh, I don't know. I did a little bit of Power Apps. That stuff is wild, though. It felt like Microsoft Access, just in the fact of like getting started feels like this big hurdle right off the bat. But like, I'm sure whenever you get past that initial hurdle, it all smooths out pretty quickly. But it just felt like getting started, I just didn't have a clear path.
As a data person, I have never been able to understand what the data flows are in Power App. Not the feature data flows, but like, where is the data stored? Where does it come in? Where does it go out? How does it connect to Power BI? Like, the whole data verse of Power Apps is very confusing, and the name that we haven't covered ourselves in glory in the naming of stuff.
All right, so kind of talking then, we've established the desktop application, simplicity and utility, ups, downs, lefts, rights. Here's your callouts, here's your summary, 50 states at the highest level. I'm not giving you every individual address. Interactive, fun, exactly what a desktop is. So a lot of this is, you have a mountain of data you're bringing into this tiny little compressed in-memory Power BI data set. It's like, all right, well, this is great. People say, well, I want to go lower. What level of grain exists? You're like, well, if we go lower, the model is going to bloat exponentially because of X, Y, and Z. The cardinality is just going to go through the roof. And you're just thinking about this approach now, right?
Yeah. And so you could do a composite model for those solutions. But I always get nervous with composite models that I'm signing up to baby that database.
Yeah.
Because they could generate any query.
So this is me going through the rigor now here is kind of working with the data set, trying to answer every question with the model. Like, well, we have this fact dimension table. Well, hold on, wait a second. What is it? Well, it's kind of a fact and it's a dimension, but it's in direct query mode, and there's a surrogate key for each row indicator, which is actually sorting. It's like, well, hold on, this is a lot going on. What problem are we actually trying to solve? If they're really just trying to get transactional level detail, this feels like it could be a paginated or some type of other report style. But they want to have every question answered in the model. I'm just not a big a fan of that. I want very
No.
specific things that answer very specific questions. If we can enhance or improve upon it, we can. But let's not throw everything at the model before we even go live on kind of day one. Just for me, it seems like we're setting ourselves up for failure. Do you see much of
Yeah.
that, Alex D, where you guys are having to
I'm.
build some weird things into the model?
Uh. So, yeah, we do see a lot of that. We do a pretty good job of pushing back when things are super weird, partially because we have, I think I was looking at our MAU numbers, and we have a couple hundred monthly active users on our model, and we have 1,000 columns, and so building bespoke features for specific reports is very confusing to the other users. So it's very easy for us to say, maybe that's not a good idea. But we also have, you may have seen me tweeting. I was talking to Alex about this. We also have our detailed data sets that have like 1 billion rows a day.
Yep.
And it's just ridiculous. And we've been trying to figure out solutions for how to make that data available for our salespeople to share with their customers. Yeah, so Paginated Reports is definitely something we've been thinking about in that context.
So Paginated Report. It's this level of detail, this granularity coming from a source system. In the black here, we also have the yellow, where I'm going to have a natural cutoff of the data, where Alex D is saying, hey, I will give you up to the day's summary. So, from 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m., I'll give you everything that happened within that day, but I won't tell you to the level of complete detail and grain at an account level, at a transaction level, whatever it may be. With that, I'm going to pass that workload down to kind of a source, maybe a paginated, whatever it may be. But this is where I think that this is an incredible architecture if you can do it right. Because now we have to think about like the sync of data and everything else too. Is the data set refresh going to also align with kind of the information contained within the source? Alex D, though, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I don't have anything to add. I was just agreeing.
So if you were to kind of go back to your sales team and say, hey, we'll give you that summary here. If you click on this item, you can now drill into the granularity of detail. Is that something that they would be excited for, or are they just like, well, why don't I just have everything in the Power BI report? Also seeing it with kind of the connecting from Excel, where they're like, well, I'm connecting in Excel to the Power BI data set. Why can I not get to the lower level of detail?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I think they are excited about that, and they do want this more granular view.
Yep.
They also really want something that they can sort of refresh on demand, because right now, because we can't offer them a Power BI solution, they export from a UI and then load it to Power BI. So this very, like, a report that can be more granular is really interesting to them.
Yeah.
And they don't need daily refresh. They just need the report to refresh easily when they need it.
Well,
which I think,
real-time execution, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. They want the report to execute and then be fast, and they can wait 15 minutes when they need it. But it's so much better if those 15 minutes are them like going and getting a coffee versus them downloading the Excel, opening Power BI template, connecting to the diffs version of the Excel file, publishing it up. Like, yeah.
All right. So thinking as a developer now, I'm saying I'm cutting off kind of my data set, daily summary, weekly summary, whatever the cadence may be. If you want to get to a lower level of detail, I'm going to offload that request to the system. So in this example, I'm just going to say I'm using a SQL Server database. I'm bringing that into Power BI's data set as an imported in-cache memory because I want that blazing fast performance. If I can't answer your question with what exists, I will then pass that down to the source system, so the SQL Server, to a paginated report. So that'll be kind of our architecture going into this. Yeah, go ahead.
Kevin asks an interesting question, and I think it ties with something earlier that Johnny was talking about, which is that because in paginated reports, unlike SSRS, we don't have the same like shared data source concept.
Yep.
So if you have a bunch of paginated reports, you may want to point them all at a Power BI data set that was built for them in direct query mode.
Got it.
To get some of the functionality that you used to get out of sort of data sources in SSRS.
Yep.
And then Kevin asks, do you use two models, or is this direct query component an extension, a composite extension of your main import model?
Ask that again.
So we're going to connect our paginated reports to a direct query Power BI data set.
Yep.
And we're going to connect our Power BI reports to an import, more aggregated Power BI data set. Should those two things exist in one data set, or should they be in separate data sets?
So in my example, I'm not even going to use a direct query data set.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying I'm going SQL, no DAX, no MDX, etc. I think Donald was saying it here as well. He's like, hey, I like this idea where I'm building it from the SQL Server data set. Like, why would I have another kind of a direct query, etc.? I'll just pass these to SQL since it's a supported source and report builder. That's what I'll talk about, at least ODBC too. Like, if you are doing Databricks, like, why not just use the Databricks ODBC connector and write SQL? Because then you're not having to deal with this middle layer of a Power BI data set generating DAX and then it has to be translated down to SQL. It's like, get rid of the middleman, go direct. But let's show just kind of a high level of what this looks like, to your end users. So I'll jump out here to the browser and
oh wow, that's a fancy paginated report.
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it?
yeah, that's great. Did Chris Hamill work on that paginated report?
So Chris and Miguel started it, and I feel like I've just carried the torch where the personalized visual showed up, and I added all these other new features over time. But I definitely started from their sample and was like, all right, let's keep adding cooler things here. So as an end user, right, like category breakdown, we could imagine that we've aggregated all the categories. We're willing to give you the data kind of at a day level, or you can just say, hey, we'll do a category if you want to drill down to a lower. But in this case, I have something here today. I point on an item. I'm doing an interactive kind of experience here now. So I want to see all of my SharePoint transactional row level detail. So I guess I could bring it all into Power BI data set, bring it all up into memory, all the uniqueness. It's giving me concerns. Or I can drill through to a parameter here with the paginated report.
Oh, so this is the paginated report. And you had that link open it in a new window, but in an app, you could have had it open as a pane in the app, right?
I don't know that it would be as easy on that one.
Yeah.
You would have to look at kind of the, I'm sure you could, just knowing that it's a URL string. That's all we're clicking, and we'll kind of dive into that as well. So here at the very top now, all we did was, here's the paginated report, here's where it lives. At the very end, RP equals kind of the colon here, so our product parameter, and then we're going to append that selection, so that SharePoint value.
Yeah.
Here you go. Here's all the transactional level details of that report. Go to town, have fun, export to your heart's content.
Yeah.
Point, Excel, whatever people want to do. Once again, I now click on something else. I'm discovering these high level summaries. Maybe I need the low level detail, maybe I don't, but this Power BI report is answering that question for that user.
Yeah.
They want to drill lower, point and click. And this is today. it's opening new tabs, right?
Yeah.
So whenever the paginated report visual lands targeted for June, kind of as public preview, it will be on the same page. It will dynamically adjust for you.
Yeah. Or at
That'll be
least you'll
insane.
be able to design it in the context of your report. You probably will want it to take up a substantial portion of the page.
Yeah, I mean, it depends kind of what is the story you need to tell.
So
Is it hundreds of columns, or is it just kind of a limited? You're looking for like more conditional formatting and detail and things of that nature.
yeah. Yeah.
So very simple here in terms of this. I'm going to kind of jump over here just to kind of a GitHub I did on a user group session here. Taking a look, so first thing you'll want to do is obviously build the paginated reports. You want to get that uploaded, build all the parameters.
So
from there, you'll just, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we're going to wave our hands at build a paginated report because that's out of scope for today's session. But I just wanted to call attention to the fact that we're hand waving that part.
Well, I'm going to open it up and we'll kind of show that a little bit. But paginated reports in an hour next week. I'll be kind of diving in and having fun.
Great.
But right here at the very bottom, like I wanted to show the DAX. So how are we accomplishing this cross-report drill through? As we click on something and we have like a link, it could be a bookmark or a button that says go to this page. If I have one value, I could also do like a multi-value select and pass those through as well. But if I have one value, go to this workspace with the paginated report ID, append kind of that single product value, go to that report page.
Yeah.
So nothing complex. It's just simple string concatenation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. And
then I'm going to go here. So here are some additional examples. On this final page, though, there's just an insane amount of things that you can do with kind of the very end here. Let me kind of do here.
Into the parameters you can put on the URL. Well, yep. I think we have homework here for Johnny W., the latest tabular editor script writer, which is that we can take and make a version of your script for calculation groups that will, for all the dimensions you selected, pass through those filters to the report parameters and automatically open up the paginated report. I think that'd be a great tabular editor script, Johnny.
And then Mark had some commentary here. It would be interesting to see the visual, but my hope would be visually look like a table, but print as a formatted report. It will print exactly how it looks. So huge benefit if people are wanting all of that content kind of on the report page, just saying, well, I want the interactive, but I also want kind of this table, this matrix. And whenever I export the matrix, I want it to look exactly how it is. So the colors are going to come with, formatting are going to come with. We're in the current, Power BI out of the box table or matrix, like you lose that, right? Like you're just getting a raw export of the data, or even like a summarized view. Do you have much of that, Alex D, kind of within your current, where people are reaching out and going, why is this table not exporting, exactly how it looks on the page?
So we used to have a bot problem, and we learned that that exporting from Power BI was a bad idea. So folks got used to writing summarized columns queries against our cube. And now these days, we've given them data warehouse access, and we tell them, oh, you should just write SQL. Now, some of our analysts are afraid of SQL, and even though they'll write summarized columns queries or edit MDX queries, which amuses me, but nonetheless, they're busy people, so... but no, we've largely gotten away from exporting from visuals, to my knowledge. Part of it is that our cube, because it's so big, if you try and export 10,000 rows, you'll get an out-of-memory error. So it just doesn't work.
So let's get in here kind of in the Power BI report. All we're doing, add it to a bookmark, add it to a button. In this example, I'm just using it kind of for the visual demonstration, but as I click on this text, have an action, come on. And the action will be, go to this web URL that we're generating. Very simple, very easy. At least from what I know on kind of the paginated report visual, it's doing very similar things here in terms of appending kind of these selections and these strings. So you do need to have that within your design mind, just as you're starting to work through Report Builder. But let me jump out of a few of these items, and I'll share these as well in the chat if anyone wants to kind of build those within your environment.
Yeah.
So Report Builder right off the bat, this getting started, these wizards, the wizards are helpful if you're just new and getting started. If you just need a simple table or matrix, point and click your way through, pretty easy, like you said, for someone like myself who never had the SSRS experience. Great way to get started. Don't really need it anymore. Right off the bat, I'm just looking at this window and I'm thinking, my goodness, this looks old or this looks dated. The best way I can say is, it's classic, it's vintage. There's not a lot of excitement here. I don't know that when you land on this, Alex D, you're really inspired to build.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Now, I will say it's not as bad as it looks. It's, Visual Studio 2013. Like it's not 2010 vintage. It's not that old.
Yep.
In fact, it's even newer than that. It's got the newer ribbon with the more colorful icons. Like this is a more recent Visual Studio design. But the grid and the way that you construct, I mean, it's really just the design paradigm for paginated reports, which is that your designs have to be sort of flexible. You don't actually see as you're building what you get. You can't do WYSIWYG because it has to dynamically scale. And so while you get something close, I just find that a very difficult way to design reports, to think about, okay, this container scales this way and this container scales this way.
So obviously we have a lot of the strong Power BI folks here kind of hanging out with us today. As you're introducing this to your peers, your colleagues, and you're like, well, you should start looking into Report Builder. It's that spice where you're like, yeah, I understand it maybe doesn't look as visually appealing, but here are all the great benefits. I'm just trying to figure out how to tell the best story with something that maybe looks a little bit dated. I know they are looking, just how do they freshen up this experience? They've done a little bit here with some of the menus and navigation, but Power BI in general, web is the future. So how do we get to the web authoring as quickly as possible?
All right. Adam says Report Builder is a pro dev tool, and all I can say to that is, well, Adam, I'm a PM.
I don't know about that, Adam. I think we get a lot of the self-service crowd in here. It's just like the initial getting started steps. So here on the left-hand side, report data sources. Probably one of the easiest ones here, add Power BI dataset connection. So Alex D, you were kind of talking about, well, we have a data model up there, we could uncompress that data and the dictionaries and everything else. Like, yeah, I mean, very easily. And then from here, I'll just kind of, unfortunately, they don't have the search, which is the killer, right? That's what I'm kind of missing.
You've got the search on the right. Is that just for objects within the data set?
Within the workspace, yeah.
I see.
Wah, wah. So in this example, I mean, well, ideas.paginatedreports.com, right?
Yeah. Mine is 10 points from Finland.
Oh, very easy getting connected now to the Power BI data set instantly. When we talked about the other sources, though, I'm building this off of a SQL Server data set. Why don't I just go directly to the source? So you're in data sources, add data source. Get this menu here in a moment. Connection types.
Yeah.
So analysis services, Synapse or SQL Data Warehouse, Azure SQL, SQL Server, Teradata, Oracle. So if you are having a lot of these issues, maybe with Teradata or Oracle, kind of get into the Power BI data set, and people are just wanting after the fact, well, how do I get my data back out into the exported table?
Mm-hmm.
Just go direct. Just write the SQL. Kind of do it here by hand.
Yeah.
But now it's kind of one maybe for you is the ODBC connector, right?
Yeah. Yeah. ODBC is really really flexible. For example, it definitely works with Databricks, which is what I use quite a bit. Now we have been trying to get our users away from ODBC, but we'll not get into why. And basically ODBC can connect to anything, and if there's not an ODBC driver for your data source, there are companies that will build one for you or sell you one. Pretty much anything can do ODBC. So it does look like this is going to support Azure AD Auth, which is good.
Yep.
And yeah.
So I'll kind of jump back here, at least on the Power BI data set. Direct query only model, customer was trying to do paginated reports through it. Performance was bad. So even trying to do paginated to the Power BI data set in direct query mode down to the source, just a terrible experience in terms of timeouts. They went ODBC, boom, they fell in love. So it was just a great win there. Kind of whenever that feature landed here. In preview, I know it's on the roadmap. Kind of be targeted for general availability September.
Mm-hmm.
Something to keep in mind there. I'll do a quick build here just on the local, kind of my local host. And then we connect out to just any of my hundreds of examples. Let's do AdventureWorks LT. Test connection, instantly connected now to the SQL Server. So I'll do this one as well. Press OK, just like that. So we can have multiple data sources within our report if we truly needed to. One example, it's imported data into a Power BI data set. The other example, it's a SQL Server. Just know that you do have that flexibility.
So there's no relationships concept, but could you bind a parameter to two data sets so that like one parameter would filter both data sets to the same customer?
Well, hold on. Maybe this is the concept of data sources versus data
sets. Okay.
So if we add a data set now, excuse me. So here, what data source do we want to use? Is it our Power BI data set? Or is it more of the SQL Server? So I'll do kind of this AdventureWorks query designer. Luckily here, just getting connected, we do have all of our relationships brought through. Kind of a pro tip here, just because this is where I struggle with Report Builder. It takes a lot of precision. Like, I want that selected. So like to get this tiny little check, it's just painful for me. I'm too used to Diablo 2 and all the ARPG. Just let me click frantically wherever I want. So from here, I just move up and down with my keyboard, press space, and then that will go ahead and select items for me. So just a nice little pro tip there if you're also kind of a frantic clicker. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is so tiny.
Yeah.
Everything here, though, in terms of relationships, you can also edit the text. So kind of writing your own SQL here then. If you are doing the ODBC, this is all you're going to see is being able to do the edit text.
As you're designing the query, it's populating that backend thing. So you could use this just as a query designer. Because one of the things that I'm in the market for is we've got all this data in Databricks, and my users, not all of them like writing SQL. I would love to give them a interactive query builder that they can then paste their queries into Databricks. But it sounds like you're not a huge fan of this query builder, but it could work that way. They could just go to edit text when they're done and then copy paste.
See, I don't mind this, yeah, but they're not going to get that experience with the ODBC connection. They won't be able to see this database.
I see. It doesn't do it on ODBC.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Love Johnny's comments here. In the 6+ years of using SSRS, I don't think I've ever used a SQL query designer. Always wrote my queries in SQL client and then copied it across. Yeah, I would agree. If you know how to write SQL, and this is like one of those great topics for me too, where it's I'm never a guy who's like, you should go learn SQL. No, not at all. Like, I love Power Query for the simple fact of if I don't know it, hopefully there's a tool that can write it dynamically for me. If you're coming into Paginated Reports, I would 100% be like, all right, well, I know I've told you that in the past, but I actually think you should probably at least learn the fundamentals of SQL here, because you're going to do a lot more things with that than you are with kind of this GUI, this wizard.
Yeah.
This would be the only time, though, that I'll advocate for learning SQL.
Well, plus the amount of SQL you need to match what you can do with this query builder should not take you very long to learn.
Yep.
Select star from group by, and maybe a couple window functions. Maybe. But, you can probably skip those.
And love kind of the +1 here from Donald. Adam's kind of an advocate too there on the, kind of learning SQL. Chris Fenlon has said kind of on the Guy in a Cube and some of the kind of Microsoft conferences as well, he does plan on bringing the Power Query experience into Paginated Reports. I don't necessarily know that that'll be Report Builder. Like I said, it's kind of the, web as being the final destination. But I'm absolutely going to love the fact, hopefully wherever that lands, we have no information here on the timelines, but if I was connecting to a SQL server, I knew what data I wanted, I could do it through the Power Query interface. It's writing the SQL for me dynamically. That would just be tremendous for those users.
Yeah. No, I agree. And
so auto detecting relationships, applying filters here, parameters, etc. Group bys, you can set the aggregates. So I mean, a lot of these, maybe this is like the earliest version of kind of the clicky here with that.
Yeah.
When you were asking about doing something dynamically, the expression editor here, you can use parameters and maybe pass things through from one item to the next. So you certainly could do something pretty dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cool. Let's see. Someone in the chat, my eyes are going right over it, even though I was looking at it for a while, points out that, it was Rafal. Stored procedures and SSRS were sort of grew up together, and they work amazing because the way parameters and report builder get bound to parameters in stored procedures. In Power BI, not so much. I think you can see a story of how the dynamic parameters that were set up for Kusto could be applied to SQL, but they haven't been. So, yeah.
And let me run this real quick. What can I do a parameter here? There we go. So we've got names. We'll add this as kind of a applied field here. Mm-hmm. So let's add this little add filter field name to, I'm just not seeing on that one, product name. It's real tiny. I told you everything is tiny here. Mm-hmm. And then equals, we'll do rear break. Run the query again. We only see rear breaks. Add that as a parameter. Press OK. Parameters now being added here for our name. We're going to go back and look at our query. See just kind of the edit as text. This will be a simple boop add name. So especially as we're kind of talking about the parameter based. These @ symbols, especially when you start getting into DAX, it's going to be a lot more interesting because there's a RS custom DAX filter, I think, function. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty weird, just because especially if you're doing like list returns, you're thinking like of values and it has to do these equality operators. That's something I'm still wrapping my head around, kind of that RS custom DAX filter expression. If you've not used it yet. Yeah. So let's do this. We'll kind of add a few elements here. Once again, still in the point and click, name, add another field, line total, we'll do another field, order quantity, right click, add a total row here now, sum of order quantity, add another one, sum of line total. If you want, you can always change these too. So kind of parent groupings. So you kind of deselect that item. Big flat table, kind of take care of our users, because I think we've got about 15 minutes left here. I want to do some cool stuff. Do a quick run. There's our parameter up in the top left. I probably want to make that a drop down though. Here's a big flat table for our folks, but let's do kind of parameter properties here now. Then we'll do, I don't want blank values, get values from our query, data sets, we'll do our name, name label field would be fine. So if you had like a month order, a month name, like a 1, 2, 3. What if I break here real quick? All right, give me 1 second. Give it a second.
So one thing I'm thinking a lot about while you're fixing this is, and I mentioned this at the top, but now we're starting to get into it. This table designer is incredibly many times more flexible than the table visual, matrix visual design options in Power BI. So when we do get the paginated report visual, this may be sort of the next frontier of creative report design, where we can build table objects that really do things that we could never do before, formatting wise.
Yeah, tons. So let's do this. Oh no, no deletes. Now having one.
Adam, I didn't say the final frontier. I just said the next frontier. But I guess Star Trek did the final frontier, and they kept pushing it every year. So maybe we can call it that. But yeah, I think there's a ton of opportunity here for doing things that we thought we couldn't do. That could be really interesting.
Cool. So parameter based, here are all of our distinct kind of names. Obviously run it here. If we were thinking about, once again, back to our Power BI report, all we would build is that string concatenator, right? And at the very end, here's our report, ampersand selection. If you're doing like a multi-select, that's where you have to start thinking. If you're doing SQL, you have to build that kind of string out, that kind of DAX, that RS custom DAX filter.
Yeah.
That one's, once again, just strange, but the concept is easy. Like, here's the data, here's the cutoff, here's what I now want to pass down to the relational source. Hopefully if you are connecting like a SQL Server as an example, if it has to be through direct query connectivity, through a Power BI data set, you're now writing DAX, 100% be a advocate for using DAX Studio as query builder. Yeah. That will save you time and just a lot of life. Oh gosh, what is that I'm saying? Multi-select from hierarchy from multi-dimensional good times. Oh,
yeah.
There's a lot of multi in there. Well, let's go ahead, see here if we can do kind of adding. We're not going to get much here. Let's do data bars. Oh, I'm just noticing like the old original icons of Power BI, right? And I think that you called this out on Twitter. You're like Power BI's older brother.
Mm-hmm.
It really is funny how much Power BI, I don't want to say stole, leverage, what's the good word, but
yeah.
Are we doing this in reverse? Are we just doing like a history lesson of where we came from? I don't know how to approach it.
Yeah. I think the word we use is feature parity. As quickly as possible. Just ship it.
So let's add a new column here. Hopefully, I'll do this right. So let's do kind of category groups. Let's do values. We use our data set one, so our order quantity. And then hopefully category group will be name, but if it's not, I'll find out real quick. So I'll drop this in here. And maybe if people have a better example of how to do that. So I just Control X, Control pasted.
Do you bind the visuals, the bar to the name, or do you just leave it unbound in the fact that it's in the box?
Say that again.
So this thing, does it just work because it's in the box, or do you need that category groups to set it to name?
So I'm going to drop this here, and then you can set this to anything. Hopefully series groups works better. This case. Still not working. Detail member with inner members. Detail members can only contain static inner members. I'm sure this means something to Adam.
I think it means it's time to call Chris Finland.
Oh gosh. Well, let me kind of open up here Spark lines. We'll kind of jump onto this one. Cool. So I have a year product category sales total. I have this Spark line. This is where it's pretty cool. We're like, oh my gosh, Spark lines are so interesting or easy. Over here, why don't we not figure them out in Power BI? I'll pull this out of the report here so it's not bound to anything. It's just going to go through kind of year product category. I'll do a run here real quick.
Yeah.
So there's a Spark line of my results. I'm still not sure why sales total isn't rendering. It's not a bug, it's a feature. But right there's all of my sales totals for all of these items. If I was to drop this into that table, so I'm going to Control Exit, I will paste it right here into that. Run this now. Put it in a rectangle.
This is some interesting sales patterns.
Yeah. So
That makes more sense.
Once again, I don't understand why the sales total isn't populating with the results.
Yeah.
But I pasted this Spark line into this individual row, so now it's looking at 2011 accessories. What is the sales total? What is the trend for that entire year? It's an iterator now. That's how I'm approaching or thinking about it. So whatever I paste into that table is going to iterate through each one of those kind of rows, create that Spark line based upon that series. If I go back here now, let's see here if I can find it. Chart properties. I have to paste it out. There we go. So there's my values, my sum, my category groups, month, number, year. Each of that calendar year is iterating through creating that dynamic Spark line for us. It's pretty wild though.
Yeah.
Change the height of the cell. It is about the cell. I like that call up. So this comes back to just like general knowledge of SSRS. Like I was never using it, Office 365 guy, but promoting Hall Turley's SQL Server reporting services recipes. It's beat up, it's torn to shreds. It's an incredible book. He's also kind of taken that and turned it into a blog series over on his blog. We'll get that dropped, but he's modernizing it for the Power BI Report Builder series. Fantastic material, though. Where he kind of talks through a lot of these concepts. I'm probably about 30% of the way through, and I'm still learning just a tremendous amount.
Yeah.
But I do think that this is the next frontier for Power BI developers.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seems like there's a lot of design things you can do that tables and matrices are really hard to do exactly what you want. I still think they're the most important visual in the tool. But this potentially opens up a ton of new frontiers. Yeah.
That'd be a lot of hair tearing. So let me do an export here to Excel. Take care of those Sparkline fans. kind of open that here in a second in Excel. All memory dumps.
Are we gonna get Excel sparklines natively populated? Is it gonna?
So this will be the interesting part, right? Is jump over here.
Or images? Those look like images.
You got it.
That is cool. It would have been cooler if they had integrated Excel's sparkline features so that it could render an Excel sparkline based on. I guess that wouldn't be pixel perfect though. That's not really what they're going for.
Yep.
No.
I'm excited though. I think for those table matrix needs, opens up a wealth of potential. As an Excel user, I hate certain things. Objects slow down your workbook. I hate merged cells. It is what it is, though.
Yeah.
It's just.
I mean, you wouldn't design something like this in Excel using these techniques, but having it in Excel like this, where you're not gonna change it, is probably fine. Like the problem with merged cells is that like you better do it right the first time.
Yep. Inspired, Alex D. Are you gonna learn everything about paginated?
I am definitely intrigued. Yeah, I think I'm really excited for the built-in visual. The more I think about what we could do, the more excited I am about the built-in visual. The using it for reports that are sort of operational reports, I'm not sure that that's going to make a ton of sense for us. But I think about some of the places that I have worked. Basically, anytime you're going to get up and do something away from your computer or just work through a list, even at your computer, like, man, these are way better. Yeah.
For me, it's a cutoff of like, hey, your model size is bloating. Can you transition some of that back to the source system through a paginated report? Writing native SQL, kind of doing those methods. Once again, though, for me, it's like, well, if you're constantly adding new data to that table, and then your Power BI, your import schedule is not particularly in line with that, are you going to introduce maybe some ambiguity in the results? Are people going to yell at you and go, why are there more results in my tabular output than there is in the Power BI report in the bar column chart? It's like, well, is that a level of acceptance that I can handle to avoid getting up to a P3 or a P5 if I can condense everything down into a much smaller imported model that's equally as blazing fast?
Yeah.
I think that's where, like, for me, like, hey, maybe we can reduce model sizes and do some other cool things here. But if you are going to use paginated reports against the Power BI data set in more of, well, I just want to make sure I can get more records out of my tables and matrices than the 150,000, or I want to make sure that the conditional formatting applies, the red, greens, up, downs, whatever.
Yeah.
All right. Yep. This new visual will definitely be a big help for you there.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense.
All right. Well, for those still hanging out, really appreciate kind of jumping back in with to Alex here today.
Yeah.
Hopefully some good thoughts for you to start considering within your own reports and kind of modeling like, well, whenever this lands, what can I do on the report page? If you're getting to PPU now or even premium, you're starting to get your hands on the keyboard with kind of paginated reports. A lot of great content out there. Like I said, Paul Trolley, Laura Graham Brown, kind of Johnny hanging out here too. He's done some awesome videos here lately. It's new content. Like, I'm excited to see what people come up with because there will be some extremely creative things. As far as the report builder is concerned, it is, I just call it classic or vintage. You'll find a cool name to come up with it too, but don't ever call it old or ugly. Just, come up with something exciting for other people. Because I think whenever they get past the initial shock of it looking a little dated or maybe feeling a little bit you know, or the pro dev, I think was the comment earlier. I think a lot of self-service users will latch onto this. It's just those initial connection points that they'll kind of figure out, and they'll build their kind of muscle from there. But
Yeah,
excited.
it's got a different learning curve. With
Yep.
Power BI, it's really easy to build something quickly, right? 5 minutes to wow.
Yep.
But in minute 35, you discover, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. And like, what have I done to my model? In Paginated Reports, it's almost the opposite. The first 5, 10, 20 minutes are really hard to figure out, how do I get anything?
Yep.
But if you're willing to push past that, it's, I think, a much gentler learning curve, much harder to create something that's going to take 45 gigs of memory on Adam's laptop.
Oh, the world is run on big flat tables. Don't let anyone lie to you there. Well, let's go ahead and wrap up, Alex D.
Yeah.
Hope for everyone hanging out. I'll see you next Tuesday. I'll be at the Nashville kind of Power BI user group. Doing Paginated Reports in an hour, so I'm gonna have some really kind of fun examples here. So especially if you're like, hey, I've never really done Paginated, but I want to get into it, and I like Alex's example. Maybe the first 30 minutes are a new muscle that you'll be building, but then after that, I hope you'll be like, oh my gosh, this is so much easier. The light bulb has gone off from there, but really excited for that session.
Yeah, that sounds like a good time. And I guess another way they can see you is if they complain loud enough and they work for a company in the Northwest or Northeast or Midwest. If you can get your CEO to complain to Microsoft, Alex might parachute in and solve it for you. But don't do that.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Enjoy your weekend.
Yeah, thank you.